Hi there, my name is Dr. Katie Saint, and this video is on antecedent strategies. So, antecedent strategies are something that we can use in our everyday life that's going to make things a little easier for us. It's going to help things go a little smoother. So, I'm going to go through a few strategies, and as you listen, I'd like you to think of your own life and where you could add these strategies in that would make your life a little easier. So, the first one is using the child's preferences or preferred items to enrich the environment. So, say you're going somewhere where you know your child's going to be bored, they're not going to like it. Can you bring along a few items that your child likes so that they have something fun to play with? So, if we think about it from an ABA perspective, we're doing something non-preferred. So if we enrich the environment with preferred items, or in ABA terms, if we add reinforcement into the environment, it will help them view that more positive. It will help them like that event more. So if we kind of think this through and plan for it a little bit, we can proactively add fun things, add things that they like to the environment, and then that'll just go a little bit smoother because there's more preferred things there. Next one is creating a schedule or a routine. So, especially when we're talking about autism, routines are super, super helpful. They're comforting to people with autism typically. So, when you create a schedule or a routine, things become predictable and that reduces anxiety. So, sometimes people make visual schedules, some people have written schedules, or some people just verbally tell the schedule. Whatever the case may be, this can really help reduce anxiety. It can help reduce resistance or escape behavior. Sometimes as little as saying warnings of what's to come. Okay, 5 more minutes and then we're going to leave. Or 5 more minutes until it's time to turn off video games. That small prompt can save you a lot of trouble and can help your kid really transition a lot better. So, think about your environment and what your child's personality is like. Do they need a visual schedule with pictures? Do they need a written schedule? Can you just verbally tell them the schedule? Do they just need a warning? What's going to work best for your environment and your situation? Next is setting the expectations and practicing ahead of time. So, just like us, when we're thrown into a new situation, we're going to be nervous, we're going to be anxious, and we're not going to perform as well because it's new. So, if we can practice ahead of time, if we know what to expect, that's going to reduce our anxiety, that's going to help us feel more comfortable, and then we're going to perform better, we're going to behave better in that environment. So, this is where your consistency is really helpful. If the environment is always changing and expectations are not consistent, this is going to increase anxiety. This is going to increase problem behavior. So, if we can set consistent expectations and if we can proactively tell our child about these expectations, that's really going to help reduce their anxiety and set them up for success. Sometimes we do this in the form of social stories. And so, if that's something you're interested in, a social story is simply a book that we write ourselves. Sometimes you can find them online as well. Sometimes they have pictures, sometimes it's just words, and it just spells out what to expect. So, it's a nice visual to help your child understand what the expectations are and what is going to be normal in that circumstance. And so this is a really common tool that we use to help people feel more comfortable and know what to expect. Next is using visual supports. So a lot of our families have little stop signs on the door that say, "Stop, ask mom and dad before going outside." Or they have visual schedules of the morning routine or how to brush your teeth or how to shower. We laminate things and put them in the shower so that children can independently shower. So think about your environment, think about what prompts would be helpful Sometimes even having the reward that the child is working for as a visual can be really motivating. If they see that item, then they're going to be excited to work for it. They're going to be more motivated. It's going to be in the front of their mind versus if they haven't thought about that they're earning that in a long time, they might not be as motivated by it. Next is offering choices. So this is a really big deal. Nobody likes to be bossed around and told what to do all the time. You want to feel like you have independence and autonomy and just like that you're your own person. And so when we give people choices, you feel a lot better about life. And so you're going to resist less, you're going to just perform better. So there is an envelope experiment that was so fascinating to me. So what they did is they were having children stuff envelopes, and one group of children were earning a reward of a shot glass filled with Coca-Cola, and the other group was earning the exact same thing. The only difference was they got to choose which shot glass that they took as a reward. So it was the same amount, it was the same thing inside. Everybody was getting Coca-Cola, but one group got to choose which shot glass they took, and the other group was just handed a shot glass. Well, the group that got to choose which shot glass they chose as a reward, they stuffed on average 400 more envelopes. So this is just a small example of how when you give people choices, they perform better. They are more motivated. So any way that you can set up your environment to give choices, you're going to help set your child up for success. They're going to feel better about the situation. So you can give choices that you like. You can think about like, okay, so say your child wants to play video games and you told them no. So instead of just giving them a no, you could tell them, you know what, it's time to be all done with video games, but you could play with Play-Doh or you could color. So now they have two choices that they can do, but it's not just a no, versus if you tell them you're all done with video games, then they're focusing and fixating on the thing that they want, and their attention isn't redirected to them having a choice or them having other fun options. So giving choices can save you from a lot of resistance. Next, adapt the activity. So sometimes we think in a box and we think really rigid on an activity can only be done a certain way. But a lot of times we can adapt activities so that they are more fun, they are more engaging, or they're taught in a different way that makes more sense to the child. So for example, say you're trying to get your child to do homework and they don't want to. Well, if they do homework outside under the tree, maybe that'll be more fun for them. It's a new environment, it's kind of different. And so then they won't resist it as much. So try to think outside of the box and see if there's fun ways you can adapt the situation so that your child feels more comfortable and is more likely to be successful. Next, proactively plan for meeting your child's needs. So if you're like me, when you're hungry, you get grumpy and you don't think as well and you're not as patient. And so that's true for our kids a lot too. If they're tired, if they're hungry, if their needs aren't met, they're not going to perform as well. So if we know we have a situation coming up where we want them to be on their best behavior, we can proactively think about like, okay, I'm going to feed them at this time. I'm going to try really hard to make sure they get a good night's sleep. I'm not going to make them do anything too stressful before that. So you just kind of plan out your day. You maybe pack some food or, you do different things to set them up so that their needs will be met. So a lot of times our internal events like hunger, sleep, having to go to the bathroom, pain, any of those sort of things, sensory experiences can set us up to be grumpy or behavioral or different things like that. So if we plan for it and address it, we can save ourselves from a lot of grief or trouble. So next is exercise. This is actually one I'm really passionate about because the research on exercise is so phenomenal. It really, really helps our body in so many ways. So we recover from illness way faster if we exercise on a regular basis. Our mental health, anxiety, depression, emotional regulation, all of that significantly improves if we exercise on a regular basis. So, to get those exercise benefits to be across the board, we want to exercise at least 30 minutes 3 times a week. That's the bare minimum that we need to do to get those generalized benefits. There is actually some studies that have shown if you exercise before you take a test scores are actually higher. It helps our brain think better, helps us concentrate, it helps us access our memory. So the best thing you can do for your body, your physical and your mental health is to exercise. And one thing about exercise to remember is that anything that gets your heart rate up counts as exercise. So if you like to dance, if you like to do jumping jacks, if you like to go for a walk or swimming or kayaking or just wiggling around doing goofy things, like it doesn't matter. You just need to move your body. So you can tailor the exercise to whatever it is that you like. So, something to think about with antecedent strategies. Sometimes we do antecedent strategies too much. So, your child then becomes dependent on you doing things in advance to help them be successful. So, then if they're ever in an environment where somebody doesn't set up the environment for them with these antecedent strategies, then they really struggle. So, we want to be mindful of that we're not accidentally making the child dependent on us to use these antecedent strategies. So, when you're using these strategies, just think through, is this something that I'm going to use temporarily? Is this something I'm going to use long term? Or is this something that I want to use just for a little bit and then fade off of it? And so there's lots of different ways we can do that. Where sometimes initially we do a lot of antecedent strategies and we set up the environment, we help the child be really successful, and then we slowly fade those supports out so that they can be independent and they're not requiring us to set up the environment in that way. So kind of think through when you're choosing your strategies, how you want to do it, when you would fade it, all of that kind of stuff. So to conclude, I want you to think about your environment. I want you to think about where your child struggles and if any of these antecedent strategies could help. I would argue that absolutely all of us could add exercise in and we would all benefit from exercise. Um, if we do that on a regular basis, we're all going to be better at everyday life. But all of these other strategies can really help too. And they don't just apply to children. So, really think through what strategies you'd want to use and reach out to your team and let them know what you want to use as well so they can give you support too. So, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much for listening to this training on antecedent strategies. I hope it was helpful. There's a lot of little tiny things that we can do in everyday life to help make things go smoother. But remember, anytime you implement a change, track it. Track the behaviors that you want it to benefit so that you know if it's worth your time or not, so that you know if it's working. All right. Well, thanks for listening.